Hello everyone, and welcome to the long-awaited Divine Oracle DC video guide. Wow, it's been like 3 months since I said I was going to make this, maybe longer than that, but here it is. In this video I'm going to explain my preferred build for Divine Oracle and why I chose to use everything that I do use. This video is up to date through Module 14, which is Ravenloft, and please be aware that it will eventually become outdated, so please check my written guide on MMO mines if you're unsure about the validity of anything I say here. So first of all, you might be wondering what Divine Oracle has to offer and why people even play it. Well, Divine Oracle is best for new or undergeared clerics to start off with because it's not dependent on your stats to perform well. Their buffs are pretty much all percent damage increases, whereas for Anointed Champion, they're primarily a power share buffer, so you would need to have high base power to be the most effective. But with Divine Oracle, you don't really need to worry about that, although having power is still good. Also, Divine Oracles can deal some great DPS if you're interested in that. On to race. That's the first thing you're going to need to choose if you're making a cleric. Race doesn't really have a huge difference in your performance. The best races are just marginally better, and they're only important if you're interested in min-maxing your character. This may sound familiar because this is the exact same paragraph I read in my AC video guide, but it's the exact same thing, so I'm just copying it. You can skip to it. There's going to be a timestamp in the description if you want to skip this part. Races are primarily cosmetic, so choose whatever looks the coolest to you because you'll be staring at it for a while. However, you're expecting me to give you an answer for the best race, so I will. In my opinion, the 3 best races are, of course, Dragonborn, Sun Elf, which was my choice, and then Human. Dragonborn lets you choose which 2 ability scores receive a bonus, and it also gives you 3% more power and crit. These are both really good bonuses, but Dragonborn is a premium race that not everyone has access to, and it might not be an option for you. In that case, I 100% recommend Sun Elf. That was my choice, and I actually chose it over Dragonborn, even though I do have the race unlocked. Sun Elf gives you 2 points to intelligence and either charisma or dexterity. You don't get a bonus to your primary ability score, but you also get 2% more action point gain, which is very important, and the extra intelligence goes towards giving your powers faster cooldowns. And you also get 10% crowd control resistance. Humans get 3% more defense and a +2 bonus to any 1 ability score, which of course you would choose Wisdom there. Their strongest point though is the 3 extra heroic feat points that they receive. These are the feat points that you spend from levels 5 to 30. These can help you max out more of your feats. Speaking of ability scores, they're mostly the same for AC and DO clerics. You'll want to prioritize Wisdom and Charisma. The only exception to this is if you're looking to be a DPS DC, in which case you could put some points into Strength instead of Charisma, but it isn't really necessary and I personally wouldn't recommend it. If you're planning on solely playing Divine Oracle, I typically recommend following the usual DPS stat distribution, which is getting at least 80% Resistance Ignored, which is now called Defenses Ignored, and trying to get close to 100% crit chance. Lots of recovery is still important, so don't skip out on that. You'll need it to keep the buffs up 100% of the time. If you plan on playing AC too, this is even more important, and in that case I would prioritize recovery over the armor penetration and the crit. Enchantments! I keep the same set of enchantments for all of my loadouts, so I have Radiance in my offensives. If you're only planning on playing DO, you could use something like Brutals or Black Ice for the extra stats, which will help with your damage. In my defensive slots, I currently use Azures. At some point in the future, I will probably replace them with Black Ice, because Black Ice have the most benefit when using the Assassin's Covenant Mount Insignia bonus. For artifacts, you'll most likely use the same ones for both loadouts, so you need ones with power as a primary stat, and then ideal secondary stats are crit, recovery, and armor penetration. The best ones to use for your primary artifact are things like the new Thirst artifact, Lantern of Revelation, Charm of the Serpent, or the Sigil of the Devoted if you don't yet have crazy high AP gain. I don't think I forgot any. As far as companions go, you can't go wrong with DPS companions like the Air and Earth Archons, Siegemaster, Razorwood, and Cholton Tiger, and so on. The best companion options for the summoned companion are either the Con Artist, the Sellsword, or the Cholton Tiger. All three of these have a 10% debuff attack at the blue quality, so you don't want to miss out on that. Con Artist would be the easiest to gear since it has 3 ring slots, and that's the one that I currently use, although Cholton Tiger has the best active bonus with a slight increase to damage. Mounts! My mount combat power of choice is the T-Rex for the debuff. And the equip power for Divine Oracle would either be the T-Rex's 2k power and 2k armor penetration, or any other armor pen or crit bonus. 4k power is the most helpful for Anointed Champion, though it's certainly not a bad bonus by any means for Divine Oracle. For insignias, the new Brutality insignias are pretty awesome. They have 200 power and 100 recovery at Epic, so that's basically perfect for a DC. Other options are of course the Dominance, Skill, Aggression, and Mastery. Some gear goals. For Divine Oracle, you will eventually want to obtain the full Faith Lord set from Seal of the Crown, which are earned by completing Castle Ravenloft. For other gear options before that, along with rings and the neck and waist pieces and so on, please have a look at my written guide because there is too much to talk about in this video. Boons. You'll always want to take the offensive boons for DO. The same as almost any other class, really. Defenses can be stacked from so many other sources that it's a waste to choose those boons. Again, please look at my MMO Minds guide for an in-depth choices and description. Feats. As a DO, I find the best feat composition is to fully take the Righteous Tree, as you can see here. You'll get more damage, and almost all of the possible buffs are located there too. Let's start off with the Heroic Feats. First, of course, we have Toughness, which is the hit point bonus. You can't go wrong there. Having more hit points will boost your damage if you're running with an Oathbound Paladin who's using Aura of Courage too. And it also helps you live longer. I grabbed some healing action, 3 points in there, so you get 3% more action points whenever you use a healing ability. So basically Divine Glow. As a DO, that's pretty much it. But it still helps, because Divine Glow already gives a ton of action points. And I have Domain Synergy, 5% more recovery. Always nice. 2 points in Weapon Mastery, so 2% extra crit chance. Repurpose Soul. Whenever one of my spells has a critical effect, the target of that spell disperses a small area effect heal, which heals me and my allies for 15% of the spell's effect. So this isn't just healing spells like Divine Glow. This is just a general when one of your spells has a critical effect. So the higher your crit chance is, the more healing you'll do, basically. I have 1 point in Cleanse, just to have it. A lot of people don't like Cleanse, but I've had it save me and save my party so many times that I wouldn't really want to go without it, although I do understand why some people would want a separate loadout that does not use Cleanse, because Guardian Fighter DPS get mad at that because they use the Survivor's Wraps to keep up their buffs. And last but not least of the Heroic Feats, Bountiful Fortune, 9% more Divine Power. This will help you refill your Divinity meter and be able to empower stuff a lot faster. Now, on to the Paragon Feats. We've got Righteous here. 5 points in Astral Fury, so that's 10% more damage, just flat damage right there. Perfect. 5 points in Furious Intervention. You generate 10% more action points when dealing damage. Perfect. We need some of that too. Righteous Suffering. When you take damage, you deal 10% more damage for 10 seconds. Perfect. Damage is fine for Divine Oracle, and just putting this in any one of these wouldn't really be very helpful, so I just stuck it there because it'll benefit me the most. And then, of course, Power of the Sun. Brand of the Sun reduces the target's damage output and their chance to crit by 5%. And Brand of the Sun is one of our at-wills that we'll use most often. Then we've got Weapons of Light. Allies within 30 feet of you have their power increased by 10% of your power. Okay, so with the release of, I think mod 13? This does not stack with other clerics. However, I do still use it because the other DC in the party who's running AC does not get their own bonus from Weapons of Light, so you'll be power sharing to them, which will help marginally. And then also, if your AC dies, or you're separated or something too far away, they'll still at least have somewhat of power share, although it's not going to be nearly as high as the AC, but it's better than nothing. And then next we have Barrier Sins. Foes who are under the effect of one of your damage over time effects take 10% more damage from all sources. Now a damage over time effect is like Forge Master's Flame or Break the Spirit, which both of those should be in use. Now this does not stack either, but like I said, some ACs choose not to run these feats, and also if, of course, they die or get separated, you can have both up. I also believe that one DC could have one mob under the effect of this, while the other DC could put another mob under the effect of this, so you could have twice as much. No, not twice as much. You'd have 2 mobs instead of 1. Or however many the radius of their attack was that triggered it, you know. And then, Piercing Light. My damaging powers have 10% additional armor penetration. This actually shows in your character sheet. Down here under Defense is Ignored. This is 78.7% right now, and if I switch to AC where I'm not using that feat, it goes down significantly, because I also have less armor penetration on me. But you can see that it does work. Now, then you have Condemning Gaze. Your damaging encounter powers apply a stack of Condemned to affected and nearby targets for 30 seconds. If a foe reaches 5 stacks of Condemned, they take 15% more damage from all sources for 15 seconds and will not gain new stacks of Condemned until this effect expires. This does not stack either, to my knowledge. I'm about 90% sure on that. But it's still really great to have, and as the reasons I stated before, it's pretty helpful to have this too. If you knew the person you were running with was already using these, you could put them up here, back up to reach Gift of Haste again, to give other people 5% of their action points when you use Divine Glow. So heal over time. You could do that, but these 2 feats are kind of useless. They're all about healing, and you're not going to really be doing that as a Divine Oracle as much, and these are far more beneficial. And then of course your capstone feat, Avatar. When you enter combat, you gain 40% increased damage, 40% increased cooldown speed for 25 seconds. And it reactivates when it's ready, and leaving combat cancels the cooldown. So you can activate it again. That pretty much clears up feats, so let's move on to powers. So I'm just going to go in order down this list of which powers are the most beneficial to use. Firstly, we have Lance of Faith. This is what I use as my primary at-will, because it has the highest damage of all of the DC at-wills. Other than that, it really doesn't have very much any special effect. Flame Strike I use only when I am soloing stuff, because it has a nice AoE damage and smashes everything in the air into the ground, which is always fun. Hallowed Ground. This is going to be your primary daily here, because whenever it's up, everybody in the circle gets plus 35% damage dealt and minus 35% damage taken. This has been nerfed recently. It was originally 40% and now it's 35%, but it's still a huge bonus and definitely worth using. Chains I mostly use when I'm soloing stuff. As you can see down here, this is basically my soloing stuff. Whatchamacallit? Combination of powers. It has a lot. It does some pretty nice AoE damage and holds stuff still for a couple seconds, which is helpful. Daunting Light also I use when I'm soloing stuff, and occasionally when I'm in dungeons and I don't need to use Prophecy of Doom for whatever reason, I'll use this instead, which is a ton of damage. Holy Fervor, I use this as one of my passives, which is basically just 20% higher action point gain. If you don't need to use this, then you can come right down here and choose Prophetic Action, but I'll get to that in a second. Forge Master's Flame, this is one of the 2 primary encounters that you'll be using. It's either going to be this one or Break the Spirit, depending on what the other DC in your party is running. You'll want to coordinate this so that each of you is using one of them. This is, of course, assuming that you have two DCs in your party. If you don't, if you're only one DC, you will want to use Break the Spirit instead. Prophecy of Doom. This is a power that is best used on bosses, but it's not required if you're in a super great party that already has tons of debuffs. If that's the case, then you're probably better off running Daunting Light because it'll be more beneficial. Brand of the Spirit, secondary at will. As you can see, it's basically just a damage over time. Nothing special, but the feat, remember the feat we have, makes it reduce the target's damage and their chance to crit by 5%, so that's great. And then next we have Divine Armor. I use this occasionally in specific circumstances like CR, Castle Ravenloft. When there's a bunch of red zones up, it just gives everyone a bunch of temporary hit points. Terrifying Insight. This right here is probably the biggest, most important buff that Divine Oracle has to offer. And that is 8 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 is 20% damage bonus, flat, just by standing near you, which is amazing. And it's only party-wide though. It only affects the people in your party. So keep that in mind. As I said, Break the Spirit, also another primary encounter. You'll be using either Forge Masters or Break the Spirit. Now, why are these so good? It is because of the Empowered bonus, which for Break the Spirit, consume all stacks of Empowered, increases the damage dealt by allies by 7% for 8 seconds per stack. So with 3 stacks of Empowered, that's a 21% damage bonus. For Forge Master's Flame, it is 5% per stack, so 15% damage bonus. And also Break the Spirit is party only, Forge Master's Flame is instance. So this is why your Divine Oracle, who will be in the DPS party for trials such as Cradle, they will use Terrifying Insight because it's party only, Break the Spirit party only, and the ACs will use Forge Master's Flame. Now, Divine Glow, this is also the most important encounter power. It's basically used for pretty much every scenario, it's just so great. If you use it in Divine mode, you give everybody a damage bonus, 5% damage bonus. Just using it normally increases each target's damage taken by 10%, which is great. And also heal over time, so it's a combination of great things. Astral Shield is very specific circumstances, usually like PvP sometimes, or I really don't see it used that often at all anymore, honestly. Hammer of Fate, It has some okay damage, and then if you kill the thing, you automatically get a bunch of action points back, which is cool. So if you wanted to use this as your secondary just to like boost your action point gain, you could. Although it's not something that I do. Now, Prophetic Action. This is what I said you could use in place of Holy Fervor if you have a ton of recovery and action point gain already. This basically gives you a little shield. It absorbs the next attack of the allies, or the enemies, on all your allies up to 25% of their hit points. So, for example, let's see, when I'm in a party I have about 210k hit points, so 25% of that is about 50k, roughly, a little more than that. So it'll completely block a 50k hit. Now, Warding Flare. Most people are like, well, what's this do? This doesn't seem very helpful. It's actually pretty good. If you have nothing else to use, of course. Like, it would be used in place of your middle encounter, in place of either Prophecy of Doom, Daunting Light, you know, things like that. It's basically a constantly regenerating shield hit points. The blue hit points that you see down here sometimes. I'll actually demonstrate. It's an item you put there, and then everyone who is in that circle gets this constantly regenerating tiny bit of hit points. If it gets depleted, it regenerates for 6 seconds. And if you can keep that up 100% of the time, it's really great at keeping your party alive. Now lastly, Hastening Light. I usually recommend to take this one in place of the Holy Fervor. You can use either this one or Prophetic Action. I prefer Hastening Light because 2 DCs using Hastening Light is crazy. That's an 8% cooldown reduction. 8 second cooldown reduction. Every like 10 seconds, because that's how often DCs use it daily. Sometimes even shorter than that. So it's really great, and it doesn't have a cooldown either. So that pretty much takes care of the powers. I'll just rearrange my powers here to show what I would typically use for a dungeon setup. I'll usually take what looks like this, and of course I change things out as necessary. And then for soloing stuff, I usually take chains, and then I put in flame strike. Alright, and that takes care of the powers. As always, thank you for watching, and if you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing. I also stream pretty regularly on Twitch now, so if you're interested in seeing some live DC action, make sure to check that out too, and I'll see you later.